Welcome to this session, Content Area Writing Strategies. I'm Robin Dixon, Pre-K through 5th grade ELA Social Studies consulting teacher, and I will be your presenter for this session. Let's begin by exploring our learning intentions and success criteria for our time together. The learning intention for this session is as follows. We are learning to use content area writing strategies so that students can effectively convey their knowledge and thinking in writing. You will be successful when you can list 3 content area writing strategies and also determine which strategy or strategies are most applicable to your classroom. Let's begin by looking at what is content area writing. So content area writing is simply writing that is completed in other subjects. This could be science, social studies, math, art, music. It could be social emotional learning. It could be lots of different content areas where you are combining writing with what students are learning in those content areas. So why do we want to integrate writing? Why is it important to put writing in instruction with science or social studies, for example? Writing is an extremely powerful way to help consolidate and solidify learning. There's a connection between learning and writing down that learning and making those neural pathways solid for students. It also helps to integrate other learning times in the day, and it frees your schedule for activities that you might not otherwise have. So integrating writing instruction also builds connection to those subjects and allows for additional time during the day. It also allows for all text types and writing purposes. Think about, for example, in social studies, you could be writing about informative writing types of materials or even persuasive types of writing in social studies, newspaper editorials and things like that. Also different writing purposes. We can write to inform, to persuade. We could write to share a thought and an opinion. So integration allows all different types of writing purposes and text types. Writing is also a lifelong skill that all students should develop. Think about how much writing you do throughout your day. Perhaps it's not a formal paper, but think about emails, for example, or texts. We want students to be able to proficiently write in all areas where they will be writing, not only as students, but as adults. So it is an extremely critical lifelong skill. And finally, we want to integrate writing because it helps students to share their thoughts, emotions, and process through life events. Think about personal journals. I don't know about you, but sometimes I like to journal my thoughts and emotions and process through situations. It also gives students a way to do that, and it helps with social emotional learning in that regard. So those are some of the whys that are my whys for integration. So I would like you to take a moment to pause the video, and I want you to think about what is your why for integrating writing with content area instruction. Please note that we will revisit this why at the end of the presentation. So as you're watching and learning about these 3 content area strategies, think about your why for integration. So pause the video, and when you're ready, start the video and proceed on with the presentation. So I hope you took a moment to think about your why for why you want to integrate writing instruction into your classroom. So now the next part of the presentation is going to look at 3 specific strategies that you can use in any content. And the first one that we're going to explore is called a raft. And RAF stands for role. So who are you as the writer? So what is your role as the writer? Are you writing as the president, a movie star? Are you a plant? Are you writing as a servant during the time of ancient Egyptians, for example? So who are you writing as? Also, the A stands for audience. Who is the audience that you are writing to? Is it a principal? Is it parents? Is it a part of a plant cell? So who is your audience? And this will make a little more sense when I show you different rafts, because you might think that's odd that you're writing to a plant cell, but that will make more sense momentarily. The F stands for format. What is the format for your writing? Is it a letter? Is it a diary entry? Are you writing a letter to the editor? Is it a journal entry? Is it an informative paragraph? What is the format that you are asking students to write in? And finally, what's the topic? What are you writing about? And so a raft writing is such a great way to implement writing in any curricula area. So let's look at some examples of what that might look like. So here is a general raft reporting sheet, and notice it has a listed roles. It has listed various audiences, various formats, and topics. And also keep in mind that this may vary depending on the grade level that you're teaching. If you are a primary teacher, then your audiences, for example, and your roles might look a little bit different. So I'd like you to take a moment to pause the video and explore the roles, the audience, the format, and the topic on this slide. And also think about what are some other raft elements that you can include for your grade level. And when you're ready, start the presentation once again. All right, I hope you had some ideas for how you might use that in your classroom. So let's look at an ELA example to begin with. You'll see that this is related to a specific story that students were reading. So we'll see that we have the roles. These were various characters in the story. The audience, who is that person writing to? The format and the topic. Notice in the format we have email, a top 10 list, a safety poster. So formats can be integrated as well. So I love that this shows some different examples of what the formats could be. And then notice the topic. Notice that we have explanatory and we also have informative types of writing tasks. We also have persuasive, defend the bear's actions in this story. But notice how this takes writing to the next level, and it increases the rigor of the writing. We're not just asking students to tell a retelling of a story, but we're asking them to assume point of view, to think about motives and the like. So notice that even in ELA, notice that this totally increases the depth of understanding and the rigor of writing. Here's an example for science. Notice that the roles are the different elements of a plant and different parts of a plant. The audience, they're writing to the other parts of the plant. Notice your format, a thank you letter, a campaign speech, a set of directions, a letter of recommendation. I love this activity for the different formats of writing, because if we think about directions, letter of recommendation, a thank you letter, these are all things that students will have to do at some point. And then you'll see the topics. So this is what a raft might look like for science. Here's another simplified format. Notice that the teacher has given the raft elements and also a choice. So you'll compare choice 1 to choice 2. And notice that you're giving students a choice as well. So you can look at the differences in the two choices and think about which one might be applicable and give students a choice to show what they know. I also love the idea of a survival guide and a travel brochure, because in a raft we're really showing the multifaceted purposes for writing and really making that real life connection to writing, which is so critical. We also have a raft for social studies on the left-hand side. So we will see that this is more of a higher level, intermediate, but we'll see an immigrant child, we'll see a fascist, a world leader. So this is a secondary example, but I want you to think about how you could apply this in social studies as well. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see an example of choices as well. This is a first grade example, and it's giving you the roles, the audiences, and the formats as well. So another way to think about social studies right here is a first grade example, and right here is the second grade example. And notice here we're using holidays as a topic. So those are a few more examples of things that you might include for social studies and science. Here are a couple of math examples that you might use in your classroom. So again, just notice that the possibilities are endless. I love right over here, invitation to a family reunion, an ad for a circus, a song. So the choices are not just write a paragraph. And so I hope this gets you thinking about how you could use a raft idea in your classroom. Here's another math example. So I'd like you to take a moment to pause the video, and I want you to think about and write down 3 to 5 ideas of how you can use a raft writing strategy in your classroom. Think about all those content areas. If as you were looking and stopping the video, or as you were reviewing the slides and ideas came to mind, oh, I love that idea for a format, or I love that idea for a topic, write those down so that you will have those to use next year in your classroom. So take a moment to pause the video, and when you're ready, start the video and proceed to our second content area reading strategy. I hope you had some great ideas for how you can use raft writing in your classroom. The second writing strategy that I would like to look at is something called quick writes. So a quick write is simply an informal first draft of writing, and a quick write is not something that will go through the formal stages of writing to final publication. It's simply that. It's simply what can you write down quickly in a short amount of time. It's also a timed writing, and the focus is on, can you show me your knowledge? So you're thinking about, what do you know about how to use fractions in everyday life? Students are going to brainstorm their ideas. Or would you rather live in a suburban or urban community, and students are just writing down their reasons and why? So it's that first thought. Think of it as on-demand writing, and think about how much demand writing we do each and every day. We want our students to be prepared in order to write on demand in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And really the focus on a quick write is reflecting on student learning. So keep that at the forefront, that in a quick write, students are showing mastery of content and knowledge. And so again, a quick write is used to assess student knowledge. It can also be used to summarize reading. It also promotes reflection skills. We can ask higher level questions in a quick write where students have to reflect on their learning or ways to apply learning in new ways. They encourage critical thinking, and we know that this is so important because we want students to think, read, write, and function on a level 3 DOK. So quick writes are one way to do that. Quick writes also help students to work on making predictions, inferences, and hypotheses. And they also promote personal connections. And we know that personal connections are so important in learning because that's what helps to create strong neural pathways, and it's what connects new learning to prior learning. Let's take a moment to look at some examples of quick writes. So in English language arts, perhaps you're going to have them write a summary of the story. What is the problem in the story and how is it solved? Who was your favorite character and why? What information did you learn from the text? And we did say that timed writings or quick writes are timed. Think about how that time frame may be reflected in your grade level. We would certainly not ask a kindergartner to write for 15 or 20 minutes, whereas for a fifth grader, we might do that. So think about the time that you would want to provide students to create a quick write. Let's look at social studies. What are the three branches of government, and which do you think is the most important and why? Notice that we're showing basic knowledge of three branches of government, but notice how we're adding in critical thinking by asking students to reflect and think about which is most important and why. We're not just saying it's legislative and stopping. Why do you think that the legislative branch is most important? We've increased that rigor by simply adding the word why. Is it better to live in an urban, suburban, or rural community, and why? Again, that why is the critical piece. Why are rules important to follow? We want students to be able to think and reflect in their social studies learning. Why are rules important? And finally, what are the special features of the blank region? So in fourth grade social studies, what are the special features of the Northeast region? In lower grades, what are the special features of Kansas even? So lots of ways to apply quick writes to social studies. So let's look at quick writes in science. How does a seed become a plant? Explain the steps of the water cycle. What are important ways to protect the environment? What are the types of clouds and which have you seen in the sky? Notice how we're assessing science knowledge in written form. So a great way to integrate and determine what students have learned. Let's look at math examples. How do you reduce a fraction? What are ways addition and subtraction are used every day? Again, we're making that personal life connection, and we're also asking students to think on deeper levels. List examples of items that could be divided into equal groups. How would you explain to someone how to add 1/2 and 1/3? Again, notice that we're applying writing into math. And by having students write about what they're learning in math, we're really determining where are they solid, and where do we see some misconceptions that we need to go back and address with perhaps a student, a small group of students, or even a whole classroom. Social emotional learning. What makes you happy or excited? How do you handle hard situations with friends? How can you help others? When you are frustrated, what helps you handle it? So notice that as we're looking through here that we're giving students a way to share where they are socially and emotionally. But notice the information that we gather as educators. If we look at that first question, what makes you happy or excited? If a student has shared something very specific, then that helps you to know if that student is having a down day or not having the best day. How can you help that student to be more motivated, more excited? Let's see, if you're frustrated, what helps you handle it? So knowing as a teacher what your students do when they're frustrated also helps you to know how you can help students before they reach that frustration level, or while they're frustrated, how can you help the student work out of that frustration? Let's take a moment to watch a brief video about quick writes.
Our goal of quick writes is to have students writing a lot, writing informally, to get to feel comfortable with it. And the other goal of quick writing is to get them to recognize that when we write in school, we're not just writing for the teacher to get a grade. That we can use writing to communicate with other people, to help us learn. So once students have completed a quick write, what do we do with them? How do we take advantage of them? And there are a couple ways that we want to do this. One is by focusing on some sort of peer collaboration. So, and this can happen even as the students are writing the quick writes. If we give students, say, 5 minutes to make a list of, this topic or that topic, or do a brain dump in 3 minutes of everything you know. What we might say is work with a partner, quickly talk about some ideas, and then both of you start writing. So that collaboration can happen as you're writing the quick write, but once the quick writes are done, the collaboration is where kids get to recognize that other people besides the teacher are going to read this. So what are some ways that we can do that? Very simply, you can just do a quick pair share. So, the two of you are going to share, read to one another. The two of you over here, you're going to read to one another. You could also do it randomly. The teacher can collect all of them, shuffle them around. And if you want, you can say to the students, you don't have to put your names on the papers at all. So now we distribute them back, and I call on a few students to read the quick write that they have. All the other students know that it's not theirs, but they recognize that at any point, the whole audience might hear their piece. There's a great little sort of activity game that you can do around this called Snowball. So the two students take their quick writes, take it, roll it up into a ball. Everybody throws them up into the air, and you grab one, and whatever snowball you end up catching, that's the quick read that you're going to write to another partner or to the whole class. So that sort of sharing is helpful. What about using the quick writes? How can the teacher use them as an informal assessment tool? Simply just collecting all of them and taking some time to read them lets you know what's on the minds of the students. So for example, this morning when you came in for our training, I had you do a quick write. And at the very first break, while you were off having coffee, right, I took a few moments to flip through the comments that you made in answer to that first quick write question. And I immediately know now what's on your mind. So you can use them informally that way. They're also, it's a great way, especially if the quick write is an exit ticket out the room, for the teacher to take a look at, gee, what did the kids really understand or remember from the lesson? If you're asking them to, as their exit ticket, jot down what's a question that's still going around in your head, that really helps you assess what you need to do for the next morning. When we talk about what do you do with quick writes, often the question comes up, how do I make kids accountable? So some teachers have said things like, if the kids don't know it's being graded, they just won't do it. And I think this is where the peer comes in. Your peers hold you accountable. So if I know that when I write my quick write, I'm going to have to turn around and give it to a partner, or that somebody, maybe anonymously, will end up seeing my piece and have to read it, that bit of peer pressure is enough for students to feel comfortable and to recognize, I've got to get something down on paper. I think the other thing is to remind them that the whole idea of a quick write is that this isn't something formal. So you're not going to be held accountable for things like spelling and conventions and grammar. We talked about how some of the quick writes that you would do might not even be full sentences if you're asking kids to fill out a graphic organizer or make a list. So letting the kids know that they're not being graded the way they would for a really formal piece, I think helps get them to use the peer accountability to be willing to write the quick write. If you feel like you need some sort of a grading, what you can do is say to the students, I'm not always going to grade your quick writes. Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. The other thing you can do is say, I'm going to randomly, when we do a quick write, I'm going to pick 3 quick writes out of the whole class, and those are the ones I'm going to grade, but none of us know who I'm going to pick before I start grading. The other thing is, give it more of a kind of a simple grade, like a check plus, a check, or a check minus. That sort of, because, it's really hard to give kids a numerical value on something that you're trying to say to them in the first place is just simple writing, getting it out on paper. So those are a few of the things that you can think about in terms of what do you do with the quick writes once students are finished.
I thought that was just a great overview of how you can use and incorporate a quick write into a classroom. And again, you can use what the author spoke on in science, social studies, math, SEL, any content area. So we're going to take a moment to pause the video and reflect on quick writes and how could you implement quick writes into your classroom. So I want you to think again about all content areas. So pause the video, reflect and write down your ideas, and when you're ready, start the video and we'll go to our last content area reading strategy. All right, I hope you had some great ideas for how to use quick writes in your classroom. Our third and final integrated writing strategy that we are going to look at is ACE. And ACE stands for Answer, Cite Evidence, and Elaborate. And so when we look at this, on the right-hand side, you'll see answer the question, and citing evidence is using evidence from your writing or your knowledge, and then expanding on your answer. And so let's take a quick moment to watch a video about the ACE strategy.
Hi, Jason Willoughby from Leverage Learning Group again, and I wanted to talk with you today about acing the question. Now, acing the question is a great strategy we're seeing being put to use in many classrooms all over the country. And so ace the question really is not that it's a new idea, that it's been around for a long time, but it really is an important part of where we are in school today. With the implementation of Common Core and the connection to really citing evidence when we're reading and when we're communicating and when we're writing, Ace the Question provides a great opportunity for students to be reminded of that fact. Also, it really promotes an opportunity for students to use academic vocabulary. We know how important it is that all of our learners, but particularly some of our English learners, need the opportunities to actually use academic language in both verbal and in written form throughout the day and throughout their learning experience. So Ace the Question is an acronym. So the A stands for answer the question. So each time that a teacher either verbally prompts or a written prompt asks the question, we have to keep the A in mind. Answer the question in all of its parts. So if there's multiple parts of that question, make sure you're answering all parts of that question. We're also going to use complete sentences. And we're also going to use academic language. You know, why do we want to use complete sentences in academic language? Well, if I can do that verbally, it's going to transfer to my writing skills. The more that I talk, the better writer I'm going to be. So we want to give students that opportunity. You know, often we tell students, you can't write like you talk. But not often enough do we say, I want you to talk like you write. The connection between verbally being able to produce academic language and complete sentences transfers amazingly to the written word as well. So after the A, we got the C. So where C is for citing evidence. So referring back to the text and what the author says or what the text says to support your answer. Making it distinct from personal opinion. Often our natural reaction is to give an answer, but have it rely upon our opinion. When we're citing evidence, we're trying to live in the text, try to stay in the text. And give additional reasoning for why you think that your answer is your answer. And then E stands for expand. So when appropriate, when students have the experience and knowledge to go a little bit deeper, you can expand your answer, go deeper with it, make connections to other things or other content that we've been learning. And then to give further explanation for why you believe your answer is this way. So you've seen it happen in a lot of classrooms, been a lot of success with it. Try it in your classroom. Have your students ace the question. They can do it verbally, and wait till you see them do it in writing. Thanks a lot.
So that's just a brief overview of the ACE strategy. So when we look at this is a strategy that helps students to compose a short, constructed response to a prompt that requires text evidence. So in science and social studies, perhaps they're adding text evidence to support their opinion or their thought. So think about that this is a little more formal than a quick write, and we're asking for evidence and elaboration. But think about how crucial that is for students of all grade levels. We don't want students to just list an answer, but we want them to really think about why and to incorporate that why and thinking in their answers. So in ACE, the focus is on process and content, and it also helps students to focus on rigorous standards and current knowledge. And again, remember we talked about DOK3. ACE helps students to get to that DOK3 level. And really, supporting your thinking and your thoughts is a lifelong skill. We don't very often say, this is what I think, and we stop. This is what I think, and why. If we're trying to convince someone of our opinion, we have to give them reasons and evidence. So the ACE strategy allows and teaches students to do just that. So here are some examples. Here's an example from ELA. What is one character trait you would use to describe the third pig in the Three Little Pigs? So here's an example. The pig was smart. C, according to the text, he took his time to build his house of bricks. And our elaboration, if he hadn't built his house out of bricks, then the wolf would have been able to blow down the house and gobble up the three pigs. So notice that it's not just saying here's the character trait, but here's why that character trait is important to the other characters in the story. Here's an example for math. There's an equal number of children and dogs. There are 60 legs altogether. How many dogs and children are there? So notice the beginning is the answer. There are 10 children and 10 dogs. But notice that when we go into the cite evidence and explain how detailed we get. Look at our C. 10 children have 20 legs and 10 dogs have 40 legs. 20 plus 40 equals 60. We're making the students' thinking visible in math. And notice the elaboration. To find the answer, I thought about the fact that dogs have 2 times as many legs as children. Knowing that there are the same number of children and dogs also helped. So I used the guess and check strategy until I came up with 10 children and 10 dogs. Notice how powerful that is, and we're really making that thinking visual rather than just asking for the answer. Here's an example for science. And this has to do with ocean webs, food webs. So our answer, phytoplankton are the base of the ocean food web. We have our C, our evidence, according to the article we read online. Notice that they're also telling where we found that, or it might be in our case in elementary, not only the article online, but the Newsela article, or the article from the teacher, or the science book, or the slide from Mystery Science. These tiny organisms which live near the ocean surface make their own food using the sun's energy. And notice their elaboration and how they're truly showing their learning and understanding of what a food web truly is. So here's another ACE response. And this one says, Jackie Robinson demonstrated the traits of perseverance by not quitting the baseball team despite the discrimination he faced. So we've got our answer, and now we're going to go into the evidence right here where it says, for example, the author states, at every game he had to put up with abuse from the stands, but something inside him would not let him give up. We're citing the text evidence, and now we have an elaboration. By not giving up, Jackie Robinson was able to break color barriers and became the first African American to play in baseball's major leagues. Notice the level of detail in that answer. Now, at our lower grades, we might do this in 2 or 3 sentences, but notice that we can add that sophistication at the older grades. So think about how this might look. Also in our primary grades, perhaps you are working through this process together and you could use this for a modeled writing as well. So an ACE would be a great modeled response. Here's another example, and they've color-coded this for you. So this is an intermediate example. Explain why the Native Americans caught diseases so quickly. So right here, the yellow is our answer. On page 71, we've got our elaboration, or our evidence, and then our elaboration. So I'd like you to take a moment to pause the video, and I want you to think about how could you implement ACE into your classroom, and think about all curricular areas. What would this look like in science, social studies, math, any other content area? So take a moment to pause the video, reflect on your thinking about the ACE strategy in your classroom, and when you're ready, start the video and proceed to the next part of the presentation. So I hope you had some great ideas of how to use ACE in your classroom. At the beginning of the presentation, we talked about thinking about your why. Why are you wanting to integrate writing across your curriculum? So after listening to this presentation, what is your why? Take a moment to pause on your why, and when you're ready, you may proceed to the next part of the presentation by starting the video. So again, what is your why for integrating across the curriculum? Let's wrap up by determining if our learning intention and our success criteria were met for this presentation. Our learning intention was to learn to use content area writing strategies so that students can effectively convey their knowledge in thinking and writing. After listening to this presentation, do you feel that your students are able to effectively use these strategies to show their knowledge through writing? Are you able to list the 3 content area writing strategies? And are you able to determine how you would like to use those in your classroom? If so, then you have met the learning intention and success criteria of this session. I'm Robin Dixon, and I've listed my email on this slide. I want to thank you for listening to this presentation. And should you have any other questions or concerns or wish to speak further about how to apply content area writing strategies in your classroom, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to work with you to integrate writing into your curriculum.